So every time I'm critical about the people around me, I need to say like, and because me too, right? That we get to this place in higher ed, whether we're in student affairs or we're faculty, where we get it, we're good, we're done. And I think that mindset does a real disservice to students and our fellow faculty and staff when we think we're one of the good ones, and really we're out here causing a lot of harm. And so I'd love to see our field move more toward humility, more toward curiosity. Those pieces, I do see patterns where that's missing.
Hello, and welcome to Student Affairs Now. I'm your host, Keith Edwards. Today, I'm joined by Fernell Miller, Dr. Mollie Monahan, and Dr. Jen Self, who are part of a racial healing project, which works with higher ed, but also younger humans in PK through 12 as well. We'll hear from them about the challenges, patterns, and solutions. I'm really excited about the three of you joining us today and what I will learn from you today. Student Affairs Now is the premier podcast and online learning community for thousands of us who work in, alongside, or adjacent to the field of higher education and student affairs. We release new episodes every week on Wednesdays. Find out more about this episode or browse our archives at studentaffairsnow.com. This episode is sponsored by Rutledge, Taylor, and Francis. View their complete catalog of education titles at rutledge.com/education. This episode is also sponsored by Huron, a global professional services firm that collaborates with clients to put possible into practice. As I mentioned, I'm your host, Keith Edwards. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm a speaker, author, and coach, helping higher ed leaders and organizations advance leadership, learning, and equity. You can find out more about me at keithedwards.com. And I'm recording this from my home in Minneapolis, Minnesota, at the intersections of the ancestral homelands of both the Dakota and the Ojibwe peoples. Let's get to the conversation, but before we even do introductions, you all have asked to begin with a ground in. So let's do that. I'll turn it over to you, Fernell.
Thank you, Keith. And yes, this is how we begin every space and session that we're in. So I invite everyone who's listening, wherever you are, to stop what you're doing, sit down, stand up, put down whatever's in your hand, find a focal point. I'm looking outside to my beautiful outdoors. I can be in nature in an instant. And so that calms and brings me back to my core self. So as we do this 30-second breathing, I'm asking you to pull in your passion, your positivity, your purpose as you breathe in through your nose. And as you exhale, let go of what doesn't serve you, what excuses, your hesitation, just let that go. Give yourself permission to pull into your heart space and get out of your head. We're going to do the hard work of heart work today. And so we need to focus and do that. I'll start us off with a big breath and bring us back with an affirmation. Here we go. Yes, noise is acceptable and welcome here. Eyes open or closed. Drop your shoulders. Know that you are safe and supported in this moment. Purpose. And with your last 3 breaths, know that you are right where you're supposed to be. There's nowhere to get to. It's all already right here. Your worth, your wholeness, and your magic. Breathe that in. And as you bring yourself back, give yourself permission to stretch, shake, stand, wiggle, however you need to be comfortable and be present with us here today. And we're also going to do a round of gratitude. So as we introduce ourselves, I'll model and start that. And hello again, everybody. My name is Fernell Miller. I am the CEO founder of The Root of Us and a freshly minted retired educator of 40 years in the K through 12 system. And my passion and purpose was to keep myself whole and my magic. And so I did that by being a PE teacher on purpose, because who has to take PE? everybody. And you get to see beautiful Black me if you didn't know that I'm a Black woman on the screen, if you see that. And I have known about love and education since I was 7. And which brings me to the purpose of racial healing is I've always wondered why my educators never knew anything going on outside the world of their door of their classroom. They didn't know the brilliance and contributions and beauty of Black and brown people. And I just thought, gosh, why don't they know? And as I grew also, I found, oh, they don't want us to know about all that. And so that brings me to my gratitude today. I have a beautiful grandson who just turned 2 and another granddaughter on the way. And as I bring my elders with me, my mother always, I bring her with me wherever I go in spirit because she never got to have any of these conversations. She's actually wants to question me. Well, who are you talking to today? What are you going to say? Who's listening? Who's going with you today? And she's 92. I am not going to be a grandmommy 92 with my grandkids in fear of talking about the truth of our world and who we are and afraid to be my beautiful Black self. I'm just not going to do it. And so after 40 years of sitting with our most young, vulnerable, beautiful human beings, that's the way I show up authentically, always, every day, all the time. And I want to give them the same permission and right to live and be. Nobody should have to apologize for who they are or ask permission to be who and what they want to be and change their mind 11 times if they want to. So I'm so grateful to be in this space, talking and sharing with you all, and especially with my colleagues here about our racial healing project and just the way that we show up in the world and the work we do together. And so although I'm retired, I'm just going to keep educating in a different way. So thank you again, Keith, for having me here today. And I'll pass to you, Mollie.
Thank you, Fernell. Thank you, Keith. And can't wait to hear from Jen. I'm just so grateful to be here with Keith, my friend of many decades, and Fernell and Jen, who have come into my life within the last decade, and just the work that we get to do together is so probably the most moving, joyful, painful, difficult, wonderful stuff I've ever had the opportunity to do in my life. And so I'm just so grateful to be here today. I'm also grateful for summer with my kids and for the sun out here in Washington State. We don't always get a ton of sun.
Goodness.
So we're super grateful for that. And
that's why we live here in Washington for these 5 days.
Right, for the 5 days of summer.
Right.
Pass to you, Jen.
Great, thanks. Thank you for having us, Keith. I'm really excited to be here. I've spent a lot of years in student affairs both at the University of Oregon and University of Washington. I was the founding director of the Q Center at the University of Washington. So that's the Gender and Sexuality Center there. And that's really where I got to first, well, not maybe first, but in a really distinct way, bring the way that I hold abolition and racial justice at the core of what I do to the work and to the work of students. And I just am forever grateful to the students who helped me create that center and the legacy that they are creating out in the world now. There's so many of them out in the world that I'm just like, wow, look at what they're doing. Look at what they're doing.
Right,
look at what they're doing.
Right.
And then
I love to be in your class.
I know. And all of that started, it started in them, but then it started also at the Q Center where they were able to bring themselves and their ideas and all of their identities and all of their experiences and put them into action at the university. And I really believe that's what the core of student affairs is about like really tapping in to the student and what they're holding and what they don't often get asked about and get to express and be and live. So that's what I've got. I'm doing other things, but I can talk about them as we go. I'm gonna pass it back to you, Keith.
Keith, I realized I got so excited about telling my gratitude, I didn't tell anybody about my background. Should I pop that in here?
Go for it. Tell us about you, Mollie.
So that 20 years or so that I've known Keith is started in our doctoral program at the University of Maryland. And so we were doctoral students together there. And I worked in higher ed prior to that as a director of student activities, worked after that as a director of Women's Center and some other work, but then pivoted to pre-K 12 when I started having kids and realized that the challenges that we see in higher education around race and social identities and injustice, I started seeing firsthand where that comes from in pre-K 12 and in parenting and all around. And so started doing that deep dive, and then realized that once I started offering work for parents and pre-K 12 teachers and started getting interest from deans and directors at university, my friends who I've been working with for all of these years, you know, they started saying to me, they started coming and learning from me about parenting and started saying, oh, there's so much parallel to the work that we're doing with college students. And why didn't we get this information beforehand? We can talk a little bit more about that later, but I just love that through line of, you know, pre-K through college, master's, doctorate. It's all the educational system that needs to be really carefully looked at and dismantled in places and rebuilt in some places and all of that. All right, now back to you, Keith.
Yes.
Great. Well, thank you for this ground in and the opportunity for me to share as well. I'll share two things. I'm grateful to be here. I've been traveling and flying a lot in the middle of ITS and Delta, so I flew home this morning. So I'm really glad to be here and to be home. And I'm really grateful to be with the three of you, and particularly this focus on healing and racial justice. I think that's something that I just love connecting with and thinking about. It feels so needed for so many reasons. And it's something that we hear from guests and we hear from our listeners a lot. You know, they really are connecting with this. So I'm really grateful. I think this will tap into what many folks are yearning for. So I'm really Before we get to the healing and the solutions, though, let's trouble what's going on in the world a little bit, and then we'll move toward that. I'd love to hear from the three of you a little bit about some of the challenges you see facing higher education related to DEI and how higher ed has approached that. What are some of the patterns that you see? What are some of the missteps? And Dr. J, we're going to start with you.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I've been in and around higher education since 1988. So, but you know, I'm much younger than that. So anyway, I've been in a lot of different universities as a student and as a person who's worked in student affairs. And the biggest problem I've seen that has been consistent over that time is that we act like DEI is some sort of thing that's outside of basic human care and education. That's what really the purpose of education should be, not what it was, but what it should be is really about making space accessible for every student, every part of that student, their experiences with systemic and daily forms of oppression, as well as the way that their communities have responded to those and have been empowering, and all the strengths that people bring from those experiences as well. And we act like that is not core to what education is. And it actually, without thinking about the whole human and the context of their life, education will never be accessible to everyone.
Well said, Jen. And just as I said, as a 7-year-old, I knew about CRT. It's called critically thinking about how come this is only working for students with white skin. Every 7-year-old Black child can tell you what CRT is. We didn't have any language or words for it. We just knew something's not right. And so removing those letters is going to magically stop it all or make it go away? We haven't practiced our humanity in school and education ever. And so now that, there's some letters to actually recognize and talk about our humanity, what we're going to stop because we're uncomfortable with the letters. How about we stop the comfort around, or stop white comfort around that? Because nobody's asked me are you uncomfortable learning about only white curriculum and whitewashed everything? Nobody's asked me about that but yet we're going to protect our children without saying, well, which children need protection? So all of that and the letters and that people get so wrapped up with is like, okay, well, you've got new language and words to say what has never happened and what should always be the center of education, which is our humanity. So
Yeah. Even the reason that we have these ideas of diversity, right? Diversity was a word we used, and then that became a dirty word. Multiculturalism was a word that was used in education, and that became a dirty word. Inclusive was a word we used, and that has become, and now DEI has had that same morphing, that it's become the kind of a no-no word. And yet this work has been inside the people who have been accessing education forever. And for sure, since the 60s, when a lot of these offices and cultural centers were built from students, faculty, power and uprising and movement. That's where this came from, is from the people. And so now what's happening is that systemically, we're trying to take DEI and put it into a system that is already broken. It's already inequitable. So you can't take something like equity and just say, let's plug it in here to this inequitable system and then expect it to make the kind of difference that we want to make.
And the places and schools that are doing the work, it's going to take longer than what? Has it been 4 years since 2020? And we think, oh, it didn't work. Let's chuck it all. Really, stop it. Took us how many years to get here? And now we're gonna give it all up. You see the effects of it in every aspect of life. We're watching it on the Olympics right now. So yes, we're doing it. Nobody's stopping anything. So thank you. Sorry, Mollie.
No. Look, Fernell, you know me. I'll sit and listen to you all darn day. I don't need to say a thing. I will add though that one of the big missteps that I see happening in higher ed today is that those of us who work in higher education think we're good. We're good. We're the educators of these things. We know the things. I see a real, I love Kathy O'Bear saying, I know you because I am you. So every time I'm critical about the people around me, I need to say like, and because me too, right? That we get to this place in higher ed, whether we're in student affairs or we're faculty, where we get it, we're good, we're done. And I think that mindset does a real disservice to students and our fellow faculty and staff when we think we're one of the good ones. And really, we're out here causing a lot of harm. And so I'd love to see our field move more toward humility, more toward curiosity. Those pieces, I do see patterns where that's missing. So that's the piece I'd like to add to that.
Yeah, and don't you think that some of that's trying to prove we're one of the good ones because we really know deep down inside we're not. So we're trying to prove to ourselves we're one of the good ones in spite of some of these thoughts that creep in, or these things that I say, or the things that I didn't quite say, right? And so I think there's some distancing from others, but also distancing from self.
Oh yeah,
for sure. Just holding that history and reality of that it's not history, that it's current. Holding that reality in our bodies is really, it's critical to this work, that we can hold it. And I mean, the way I think about it is, I hear people all the time saying, oh, I didn't do that. I wasn't there. I wouldn't. And it's like, okay, fine. You are not responsible for the history. You are responsible to it. You gotta like pick it up, man, and walk with it. Otherwise,
and it's going to be messy. So stop the perfectionism over it. And I'm going to say the wrong thing. Stop, because then that's keeping you from doing absolutely nothing, which is the whole goal of the white supremacy culture: is don't do anything, don't say anything, hush, close your eyes, don't look, don't feel. And we're messy human beings. We're going to be messy at it, but we can be messy at it and do it together is the point.
Well, let's do that.
Let's do it. Let's do that.
Sure.
I was going to move us, Mollie, but what did you want to
go? No, go, because I think mine can come back to.
Yeah, and I love that we sort of shared some of the things we want to trouble about the system and about the history and about how we're doing it. And you've created this racial healing project. So I'd love for you to tell us more about that, what that is, how that came to be, how you're doing that. Go ahead, Fernell.
Well, Keith, you said it. People are hungry for it. Not only hungry, they are starving for it. And like I said, I was too. Where are we going to have a conversation with each other instead of about each other or through and around through media and books and white? Like, when are we ever? Did we do that at work, at the water cooler, at reset? Like, where? Nowhere. And so I just started holding space. I just made a Zoom link and said, Racial Healing Circle, anybody want to come? And I get folks from all around the globe. Tanzania, Canada, East Coast, Australia tuned in, and we all want to hear from and with each other. And so I just kept holding these spaces because of that's kind of the silver lining of the pandemic, is to get in these Zoom spaces, and I'm never letting them go. I'm like, oh my gosh. And personally for me, I can go, living here in Washington, I can go months without seeing Black women outside. I have to have an event, or it has to be Black History Month for me to actually connect. And so I'm real intentional with my spaces, and as a circle keeper, I'm just holding space where we all can have a conversation that transforms us and affects us personally, and then our sphere of influence, and then out in our global community. And so we just kind of kept doing that and morphing it into different things. And so we've got youth circles on Wednesdays and educator spaces on Mondays, and Black Sisterhood on Saturday, racial healing on Sunday. So all of these spaces where people are gathering and holding conversations and transforming. And folks always ask me, well, Fernell, don't people just come in all arguing and fight? Nope, not at all. Because the container we set is set with love, intentionality, humility. I follow Dr. Kimberly Creighton's, I create a protocol in the chat to know that we're going to get a turn to speak. It's all trauma-informed care. You're not going to have to jump over somebody to get something said. You're going to have space. And for me, that's so important, because I know when I show up in predominantly white spaces, I have about 30 seconds before I'm cut off or interrupted or pushed back on. And so Circle allows me to have a space where I can actually sit with my thoughts and think and speak without being rushed and hurried and, oh no, what's somebody going to say? And so the spaces that we create are doing just that. And we want to do more and more of that. And that's what kind of is developing into a project, which we'll tell you more about later. But just that's the intent, is intentional, purposeful, mindful, loving spaces for our humanity, to practice our humanity. Where are we practicing that? Anywhere? Anybody? Yeah, I didn't think so. So, because I was looking. So we just built it. Come on over. We're over here.
Yeah. As you were talking, Fernell, I was thinking, I think a lot of people's lives are this. I think fewer white people's lives are this, which is, I feel like my life has been a racial healing project. That's what it is, actually, because to be a person in this country, we are born into a system that is still resting on genocide and slavery, and that is not gone. That is built into our economic system and continues to play out. And then we play it out interpersonally. And I just know that when I was a little kid, I was a little queer kid, little gender queer kid, feeling very outside the world and outside of my family and outside of everything. And I looked around for other people who might be having a similar experience. And so I was asking questions as a little kid that I didn't always get great answers to from my family or those around me. But one of the keys, and I'm going to mention my teammates at UC Berkeley. I played basketball at Berkeley. Go Bears. And my teammates, don't worry, the book's coming and you will be thanked by name in the book. But by my teammates, really, that was a place where I got to really have conversations about gender and sexuality and race and their experiences as Black women in the world. And that experience of being on a team that had that had those conversations is that it told me this has to be at the center of what I'm doing every single day, or it's not going to be something that I am able to enact.
Right.
And so I asked myself, well, what can I do right this second with what I know and what I have? And what I knew is I could be consistent. I could wake up every day and decide, today, again, I am doing this racial justice work inside myself. How am I letting go of things that I learned that are flatly not true? How am I letting go of things that I learned that are just so quietly built into white supremacy and patriarchy that I'm having to see them as I go along and as I make those errors? And then how am I putting that into my work? And as a 19-year-old, that felt daunting. As my 54-year-old self now, I'm like, yeah, it's just become a part of who I am and how I function in the world, how I think, how I operate.
That's your practice.
That's my
Yes.
practice. And it doesn't mean that I every single day I'm doing every single thing right, because I certainly am not. But it does mean that it is not part of my practice to be like, oh, well, I didn't mean that.
Right.
Or like,
Make denial and
I made a
excuses
mistake. Oh yeah. And then part of that is accountability and then reparation for what that mistake was.
Yes.
I love that.
That's why you're mine. Jen.
That's right.
You're mine now.
I know.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest, most important parts of the Racial Healing Project for me is this sense of modeling what it really is to do this work in deep connection to our humanity and deep connection to each other across race and gender identity. And so the three of us,
Solidarity.
it's that solidarity, but it's also, so we there was this one time we were speaking at a conference and Fernell and I had a real moment up on stage. Fernell's like, tell the story. So, Fernell was speaking and sharing wisdom, and we were getting close to the end of our like allotted time, right? And like I, in my white body and my white supremacy culture that is so steeped so deep in, right? I'm like, TikTok, we got it, right? And
You're telling me to wrap it up for now.
I really did. I was like, you got to be done now, and Fernell did, and we moved on and whatever. But then I was like, wait, stop. Did everyone notice what just happened there? That was white supremacy culture at work in my body that I put on my friend Fernell, that I put on all of us. And I think one of the things about the Racial Healing Project is that there is so much room for our humanity and our messiness. In fact, it's like required, right? We have to notice and name immediately or have the capacity to circle back, right? And it was after that, I can't wait to hear what Fernell has to say about all this, but right, like it was after that and around the conference that people kept coming up to us and saying like, I have never seen that before, much less on stage in front of hundreds of people. Like nobody does that. And also you just blew my mind about the depth of your relationship. I am in relationship with Black women, but I don't have that kind of relationship with Black women. So anyway, the
other part that they saw is after you circled back and went, oop, my bad, did you see what I just did? And then to follow up to say, and did you see what I didn't have to do? I didn't have to comfort her and rock her on my lap and take her crocodile tears and turn it in about her. Like, no, we moved on. Yeah, you messed up. Let's do that. Let's not do that again and go forward. And people just kept coming to say, like, wow, I didn't know that you could have a relationship like that. What was that? I'm like, that's called humanity. We're messy. We mess up and we move on. We don't have to have a big party and pity about it. And the whole point of healing, especially with trauma, is not to gird ourselves to like, okay, so I can heal better next time. No, It's to make room for all the joy, love, creativity, capacity for each other, our humanity, so we can handle more. Not
Right.
to guard up for the next time. Oh, I'm gonna wait till that woman tries to interrupt me again. Oh my God, I do not have time in my life and space to hold on to that stuff.
Yeah.
So
That
It's
story
like,
reminds
it's
me of my friend Jane Summers talks about white women's shame spiral and how that
Mhm.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
cracks
Ooh,
and
go
then
on down it.
and centers them and their feelings, things. And
Yeah.
when we mess up, how do we stay out of that shame spiral and notice
Mhm.
the temptation, right? And I think that story is just a great example of naming what's happening, naming what's going on without
Mhm.
I'm a bad person and what
Right.
having to defend your
Nope.
own humanity,
Mm-hmm.
which I
what's
think
that
is
piece
really great
about,
modeling.
oh, sorry, Keith.
No, go ahead.
It's that piece around, it's not whether or not we mess up, right? It's what we do when we mess up.
Mm-hmm.
That's the piece that I think is really missing in a lot of our work around whiteness and unlearning our own racist patterns. We do get so stuck in that perfectionism, and we don't want to go out there and do a thing before we know it perfectly. But what the real gem is here, what the real piece that we want everyone to walk away with from the Racial Healing Project and any of the work that we do is, we know we're going to mess up,
Mm-hmm.
but the next step shows us whether we are connected to our humanity or we're, in the shame spiral, or we're whatever, right? The next step, how we handle it, how we name it, how we let it, how enough healing has happened in our body that it can sit in our body without disrupting an entire auditorium.
Which is
more.
why you're mine, Mollie, because I cannot go round and round with
No.
folks about that.
No.
And to be clear, the unlearned whiteness is in all bodies, Black, brown, and others.
That's right.
That's right.
And nobody said we're attacking white people here. This is about
right.
our culture of white supremacy that we were raised and bathed and soaked and doped in. And so also with the anti-Blackness, I know you've got it because I was taught anti-Blackness and to hate myself. I'm like, what? Why would I do that? That's all part of the systems that we're speaking on and unlearning and healing from. But if we don't ever get to talk about it with each other and we just talk about each other, then we just keep that harm going instead of healing.
That's right.
Yeah, I want to highlight the circle here that both of you talked about. Circle in particular ways. Fernell talked about like racial healing circles. Mollie talked about circling back. And one of the things that when I met Fernell through Erin Jones, by the way, thank you, Erin.
Hi, Erin.
Hi, Erin.
Shout out to Erin Jones.
What I realized is she's mine already because I've been doing circle work, circle leadership, circle practice for years and years and years. And of course I was, because everything that informed me was based on Black feminism and indigenous feminisms, which is all goes back to, being part of a community, being in relationship to one another, being in circle with each other. And this circle, I think, gets misused by people a lot of times because we want to stay in control of it, right? We want to be in control of what's happening and make sure the time happens and make sure people. And part of what really being in circle is about is knowing that I have control over one thing, and that's how I show up, and letting go of control. And that doesn't mean letting go of leadership. It just means letting go of that piece that we think is part of it, which is control.
Yeah,
that's right.
Probably one of the most, and maybe the most transformative experience in my life as a white person was hearing Cornel West speak when I was a junior in college.
Yeah.
And there was a part near the end of his talk where he talked about the white supremacy inside him and his thoughts. And I remember sitting there as a 21-year-old being like, well, if this thing has infected Cornel West, is brilliant.
Exactly, right?
We're all doomed.
What chance that I missed it, right? It just
yes,
was permission
that's correct.
to acknowledge my own internalized white supremacy, not with shame, not that I was a bad person, not that I had done something wrong, but just well, of course. And so I could be curious about it, I could share it, I could talk about it. And when it showed up, I could just be like, well, that's why I mixed up those two names of two Black men. Okay, that's white supremacy. That's that's what that is. I got to pay attention to that better.
Right.
And that permission slip has been really
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Well, I love you sharing about the racial healing, and not only are you sharing about that, you're modeling it just in this conversation, which is really beautiful. I think one of the things I also want to tap into is that you've not just been working in higher ed, but you've also been working in a K-12 environment. For now, I'm just wildly curious about watching you teach gym. Like, I'm having trouble picturing that, but I would love to see it. But I'd love to hear what similarities and differences that you've seen and learned from working across this lifespan and these different systems of education.
Absolutely none.
Yeah. Absolutely none. It's
Meaning
true.
there's no difference
Mm.
how our elementary students, middle school, high school, college and beyond show up, and the educators who show up with them. We've been duped all together. And
Mm.
so the kids who are much more ready to have conversation and be authentic and ask the questions, the adults are the ones who are like, wait, we were told never to talk about that. Well, we were told not to see color. And so there's like this real disconnect and clash, and which is one of the reasons why, and again, my 40 years has been in one entire school district. I was a student starting in 5th grade and graduated, and I thought, oh my gosh, I've got to go back. I've got to go back to this white supremacy system to mess it up. I'm shaking my hands in front of the screen to disrupt that, because I know the lie that I'm not in any textbook. They never talk about me instead, unless it's a dehumanizing, derogatory way. I'm not represented. I see so I'm staying for a mirror for kids who look like me, and a window for the kids who don't, so they can see like, hello, real relationship with Black people, brown people, all kinds of people. And there really is no difference, which is why I started the high school. Middle school is my favorite, but I went back to elementary on purpose to start this conversation and disrupt it. And I mean it. I'm holding, in any school that I'm at, because I teach PE, I'm holding the entire school in my palm of my hand. All 400 students at an elementary. Every middle school kid has to come through me and my team to do PE. I taught the life fitness graduation requirement courses at the high school, so you couldn't get through without seeing. And if you flunked, I taught summer school too. So
you can't miss me there to either.
and I have kids call me back to this day to say, thank you for not giving up on me. I wanted you to be the first to know that I got into this college because you didn't give up on me. And here's how what I did with what you imparted in me about not centering my own self and decentering just the racial isolation that we all grew up in. And so when I work with higher ed, we are still working with those kindergartners. You still have those middle schoolers. You still have those high schoolers who are still trying to have those conversations, and some got to, some didn't. And I remember getting a text in the middle of the night from one of our high school students. She said, this is all we've ever wanted, is to have this conversation and to be centered and be listened to. And these are from kids who came in our Zoom class, and I wasn't their direct teacher. They didn't even know me. They just knew of, there's a spot where these adults, where Dr. Jen, Dr. Mollie, Aaron, Vincent, everybody, like, these are adults who actually listen. They're going to talk about this topic. They're going to hold space where we just get to be ourselves and don't have to ship shaved and appropriate and adapt and be followed and tracked. We get our own minds back. We get to speak with our heart. What? And kids were flocking. We had to hold circle every day of the week because we didn't have enough room for that's all they've ever wanted. So no, there's no difference. Some have words for it and some don't. And that's adults and kinders all alike. Yeah. We don't all have language, but we all are living through a similar experience that we don't know how to navigate. We've never been coached, taught, practiced, any of that. And so that's where we all come together to say, hey, let's do this. Let's heal over here. Come on, we're going to try it. We're going to hold space. So thank you for that.
I always want to ask, our colleagues in higher education, who do we think we are? Teaching, educating 18-year-olds without having any idea about their development prior to landing on campus. Who do
Ooh,
we
say
think
that,
we
Molly.
are?
Say
Who
it.
do we think we are without having that part of our curriculum? And I mean, our curriculum, learning to work with college students, right? So
Yeah.
we can look at pre-K-12 prep, and we know that it's very rare in those college prep in those prep programs for teachers, teacher prep programs, that they even get one quote unquote diversity course, right? Much less have it as a through line throughout their entire education, which is where it should be,
Right.
right? But then we get to higher ed and we feel so enlightened because we're talking about it, right? But we never stop to think, like, what's the root of all of this? And so when I do my one workshop that keeps going strong, people still really want to see the how to talk about race with the kids you love and ages and stages guide, right? Like, I mean, what's the first time we all saw that? It was a while ago, but you know, it keeps being a popular workshop because it takes us back, and
Right.
it takes us age by stage through the racialization of children. And that, as higher ed folks, helps us understand how college students, how and why college students are the way they are, as opposed to just sort of like, I don't know. I know for myself, working in higher education, I was making a lot of assumptions about how and why they got there. And when I started really digging deep into the early childhood racialization literature and like being in schools in that way, it was like, oh, right, got it.
This makes me want to like draw a parallel like between some of my identities and like those of Fernell, although I think Fernell and I actually have a lot of overlapping experiences, but part of that is because of how you were raised, Fernell, and what you got from your father and the strengths that you incorporated in the face of the racism that you were experiencing in Washington. But being a, you know, here I am, white, queer, genderqueer, like I have experienced all sorts of things. I've been treated as I'm not human, all sorts of things. And education was easy for me. So I want to say that is a very clear, education embraced me. It didn't embrace my genderqueerness. It didn't embrace my queerness, but it embraced my whiteness and it embraced my class status. And so education felt to me like it was made for me. And it was, you know, I just like went through and got, I mean, I have so much education. It's kind of ridiculous because it is a place I felt safe, was in higher education. And so the parallels here are like what I see in young people who have intersectional multiple identities that are multiply, you know, focused on and oppressed in this country. It's very different than the experience that I have those too, and I am white. That trumps almost everything that you know, people don't like that word, but it does trump everything that's going on with a person, because I am still on the outskirts of whiteness. I'm still right on that border. Now, if we really look at ourselves, those with these identities like that in whiteness, we are much closer to the folks who are outside that circle. We are much closer. We are having many more experiences that are akin to the people who are right next to us outside that circle of whiteness. And yet, what we have done for years and years and years is try to become part of that circle that we are on the outskirts of. And for me, it was a very clear decision and choice that I'm going to go over that border and I'm going to live over here. I'm going to live in this space. And I'm saying that that's a choice because it is a choice for white people. And when we make it, there are consequences to that. And those consequences I have started to think of as successes. Those things that some people might see as like, oh, I didn't get that. Right. I didn't get that job. Okay. Well, I didn't get that job because I was teaching from a critical race perspective. And I was teaching that we need to make classrooms open and accessible, and how part of how we do that is by centering those who have not been centered in education. That's why I didn't get that job.
Right.
Not because I wasn't qualified.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Mhm.
And that has become kind of a badge of, okay, I'm doing this right then.
Mm.
Because there just isn't a way for me to get across that border.
Mhm.
And you have seen it, like, doesn't matter how much money and status and all of that, my Blackness is always going to be seen first. And so I might as well be good at it. So here I am.
Mhm.
And for me, being in those schools with so few Black students, I need them to see that this is their identities of who and how they want to be and show up is always going to be the best choice, first choice, only choice, and more than okay.
Yeah.
And look who's leading us right now on college campuses.
Mhm.
It's always been the youth.
Mhm.
And so
Yep.
we can't shy away or be afraid or try to shut them up or shut them down. They have always led us.
Yeah.
They are
Yep.
closest to the truth. That's our youth. Let them lead.
Yeah, Jen, your framing of the consequences of successes reminds me of a mentor of mine, Francie Kendall, who did a lot of work on whiteness, saying, being an aspiring ally is not doing something and getting praise and credit and affirmation. It's being willing to step in the train so that person doesn't have to get hit one
That's
more
right.
time. And you're talking about, like, yeah, there's real consequences. When you do real work, there are
Right.
real consequences, and seeing that as affirmation of doing the work,
Like,
as
I
a
did it.
success, as this is how it works. There's negative consequences for me, but that might mean I'm doing work in the world that is needed, is really
Yeah.
powerful. Well, we are running out of time. The podcast is called Student Affairs Now. We always like to end with asking our guests, what are you thinking, troubling, or pondering now? And we'd also love to know where folks can connect with you. And I realize I didn't put an order for this question. So, Mollie, let's start with you.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you can find us at theracialhealingproject.com. Our friends at the Ohio State University will appreciate that.
Right.
Theracialhealingproject.com. And we do want to let you know about okay.
Yeah.
So we do want to tell you about something we're really excited about this year, and that is our college connection. So we are offering this really cool package to universities this year where they get us for 3 whole days, all 3 of us, for
Come
3 whole
on,
days.
bring it.
On campus, for keynote, for meetings with key constituents, and for racial healing circles, cross race, cross gender identity, and also an affinity space. And then ongoing work with, after we leave campus, because I know one of the things that can be really frustrating when you work with that campus visit type model is that you go away and then, like, what do we do now? So it's that ongoing thread that makes such a difference. And so, and offering those courses that we have, like I teach that course for parents. Well, guess what? Faculty, staff, even students are
Everybody.
parents, right? And so what do we do when we learn how to do this work with kids? We take that into our whole life 360, right? So
Right.
all those things, and we have courses and all the things, right? So, but we're just so excited about this college connection offering this year. And so we'll definitely have that up for you on the website as soon as this goes live.
And here's what I want to say about whatever we do now ripples 7 generations out. And I want to give a little quote by Crazy Horse. A little part of this quote is, I see a time in 7 generations when all of the colors of mankind will gather under the sacred tree of life, and the whole earth will become one circle again. That's the Racial Healing Project in a nutshell. Come on, let's circle back.
Let's do it.
Yes.
So that's where they can find you. Did you share what you're troubling now? What are you pondering, troubling now, Mollie?
Oh gosh, I guess I didn't.
Yeah, what's on your mind these days?
All the things that we just talked about today. I'm so concerned about the future in so many ways, although our recent turns of events have given me a little breath of hope. But there's still so much work to do, right? I never want us to sit back on our laurels, so to speak. I want us to be in partnership with kids. I want us to uplift the voices of kids and students and youth, yeah, those are the things that I think are really heavy on my heart.
Great. Jen, how about you? What are you troubling, thinking, pondering, and where can folks connect with you?
Thank you. You can connect with me at brick13.com. So that's my site. But there are two things I have in my head, and one I think is more a conversation, and the other is just it's weighing on me. With the death of Sonia Massey this past week, I'm sitting with when I see those things, or when I know those things are going on all the time, and I am troubling. How do we actually stop supporting the violence that is happening towards Black people? How do we actually, like, everybody, like, just stop? That seems like such a thing that we should be able to do. Just stop killing Black people. Like, just stop it. And so I'm troubling that. And then the other thing I'm troubling is this way that we are having these separate conversations about gender and race as if they're not connected, and they are intimately connected. That is what our power structure is built on, is the combination of gender and race and wealth, those three things. And so when we have conversations, like when you see a white person like me who has a gender expression that I have, I want to make sure that people know I am always talking about the intersections of race and gender. Just because I show up in a white body, that I am not talking about white people and our gender experiences. I'm talking about the people who are most vulnerable in our communities. And that is always going back to Black and Indigenous, trans and femme people. And so when we can really center those people, those experiences, those voices, that's what I'm always thinking about. How do I keep those things in mind as I go forward?
Thank you.
Take a breath on that, Jen. Thank you. And in that same vein, what I've been asking in my circles this whole past year is, what's your pedagogy or practice relationship around Blackness? We do a lot of work and interrogation around whiteness, white supremacy culture, all the things, but flip the coin and what is your actual relationship with Black people, Black culture, Black youth, Black men, Black women, families? Do you have a relationship? Do you want one? What is it? And the group I've been sharing with, they said, gosh, thank you for that question. I never get even time to think about that. I'm like, yeah, let's think about that. And that goes like those questions come from Aaron Johnson. I found him on Facebook. Hi, Aaron, if you ever see this, but just where are you with it and where do you want to be? Because Black and brown people, we don't ever get to be without whiteness. We don't ever get a world where I don't have to interact, but white folks can go through their whole entire life, birth to death, without ever interacting with Blackness, Black people, Black family, Black life, other than being a voyeur from a distance and waving on, History Month or whatnot. So to sit with that and question and interrogate, where do you want to be? What would your life be like if you had those real relationships? Because that's how you stop killing Black people, is
that's right.
Have relationship and humanity and love.
And Fernell, do you want to share where people can connect with you?
Oh, well, I guess so. You can find me. You can always find me at therootofus.com, and my courses are going on all the time. And I would be happy to receive all and anyone in Circle. Eventbrite is also where you can find the Racial Healing Circle too.
And so the racialhealingproject.com is where we can find sort of this group project. And then we've heard Break 13 and The Root of Us. And Mollie, where can they find your stuff?
Oh, right. Socialjusticekids.com.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks to the three of you so much. This has been fantastic.
Keith, you're awesome.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you, Keith.
you.
Thank
Keith
you.
is awesome.
Thanks for your healing leadership in this space. I really appreciate it in the conversation. And thanks to our sponsors of today's episode, Rutledge and Huron.
Yes, thank you.
Rutledge, Taylor and Francis is the world's leading academic publisher in education, publishing a wide range of books, journals, and other resources for practitioners, faculty, administrators, and researchers. They have welcomed Stylus Publishing to their publishing program and are thrilled to enrich their offerings in higher education teaching, student affairs, professional development, assessment, and more. They are proud to sponsor the podcast Student Affairs Now. View their complete catalog of education titles at rutledge.com/education. And Huron is a global professional services firm that collaborates with clients to put possible into practice by creating sound strategies, optimizing operations, accelerating digital transformation, and empowering businesses and their people to own their future. By embracing diverse perspectives, encouraging new ideas, and challenging the status quo, Huron creates sustainable results for the organizations they serve. And as always, a huge shout out to our producer, Natalie Ambrosi, who does all the behind the scenes work to make us look and sound good. We love the support of our community for these important conversations. You can help us reach even more folks by subscribing to the podcast on YouTube and our weekly newsletter. Well, you'll get an announcement about each new episode on Wednesdays. If you're so inclined, you can also leave us a 5-star review. I'm Keith Edwards. Thanks to our fabulous guests today and to everyone who's watching and listening.